For almost 50 years, Microsoft operated on one simple idea: protect Windows at all costs. That operating system built the company. It created the PC era. It turned Microsoft into one of the most powerful corporations on Earth. Entire careers, industries, and economies were built on top of it. But right now, inside Microsoft, something unprecedented is happening. Teams connected to Windows are being gutted. Veteran engineers are disappearing. Entire layers of management tied to the operating system have reportedly been absorbed, merged, or quietly eliminated as Microsoft races toward AI and cloud dominance. And according to former Microsoft insiders, the people who built the old Microsoft barely recognize the company anymore. That includes Bill Gates. Not because Windows is failing, but because Microsoft no longer behaves like a company that believes Windows is the future. And once you understand what's happened behind the scenes over the last few years, the story becomes a lot bigger than layoffs. Because this isn't just about employees losing jobs. It's about the slow dismantling of the product culture that made Microsoft untouchable in the first place. And if you use a Windows PC for work, gaming, business, school, or literally anything important, this affects you more than you think. Because the company that once obsessed over building the world's dominant operating system is now treating it like a support system for something else entirely. To understand why people inside the industry are so alarmed, you have to look at what Microsoft has become. For decades, Windows was the center of the company's universe. Windows generated the ecosystem. Office depended on it. PC manufacturers depended on it. Software developers depended on it. Even Microsoft's internal politics revolved around whoever controlled Windows. Former executives have openly described old Microsoft as fiercely Windows-centric. If a decision benefited Windows, it usually won. That culture created legendary moments. Windows 95 changed consumer computing forever. Windows XP became one of the most successful operating systems in history. Windows 7 repaired Microsoft's image after the Vista disaster. Even critics admitted Microsoft understood one thing extremely well: platform dominance. But around 2014, everything changed. Satya Nadella became CEO, and to be fair, his strategy worked brilliantly financially. He pushed Microsoft aggressively into cloud infrastructure, enterprise software, subscriptions, and eventually AI. Azure exploded into a multi-billion-dollar powerhouse. Microsoft's stock surged. Investors loved the transformation. But there was a hidden consequence. Windows stopped being the company's main priority. At first, the signs were subtle. Microsoft stopped treating Windows launches like global events. The company talked more about Azure than the operating system itself. Windows updates increasingly pushed services like OneDrive, Edge, Bing, and Microsoft accounts directly into the user experience. Then came the internal restructuring. Over the past several years, Microsoft repeatedly reorganized divisions connected to Windows development. Teams were merged. Layers of leadership disappeared. Engineering resources shifted toward cloud and AI initiatives. Thousands of jobs were cut across the company during multiple layoff waves in 2023, 2024, and beyond. And here's where the story gets uncomfortable. Several former Microsoft employees described the same internal feeling. Windows was no longer where the company's future prestige lived. AI was. Azure was. Enterprise services were. Windows became maintenance. That shift completely changed the company's priorities. Now, publicly, Microsoft never says the Windows division is shutting down. Technically, parts of it still exist across broader engineering structures. But internally, the standalone dominance of the Windows organization has clearly been dismantled over time and folded into larger platform and AI-driven priorities. And that distinction matters. Because when a company stops organizing itself around protecting its flagship product, the product changes. Fast. You can already see the consequences. Windows 11 became the clearest example yet of Microsoft's new philosophy. The operating system launched with stricter hardware requirements, forced Microsoft account integrations, TPM restrictions, aggressive edge promotion, and deeper telemetry systems. A lot of users didn't see innovation. They saw control. And that backlash wasn't coming from random casual users. Some of the loudest criticism came from longtime enthusiasts, developers, IT professionals, and power users. The exact people who historically defended Windows even during rough periods. That should have been a warning sign. Instead, Microsoft doubled down. Copilot integrations appeared across the operating system. AI features became deeply embedded into the Windows roadmap. Subscription ecosystems became harder to avoid. Local computing increasingly started feeling secondary to cloud-connected experiences. And behind the scenes, thousands of employees were disappearing while all this was happening. That's the part most headlines miss. Layoffs inside software companies don't just reduce payroll costs, they remove institutional memory. The engineer who understands why a 20-year-old compatibility layer still exists suddenly leaves. The developer who knows how enterprise systems react to specific updates disappears. The internal tester who remembers past failures gets cut during restructuring. Most users never see those losses immediately. They feel them later. A broken update. Printer failures across enterprise systems. Gaming performance regressions. Random instability after patches. Features launching unfinished. People think these issues appear out of nowhere. Usually they don't. They appear when experienced teams shrink, while product complexity keeps growing. And here's the twist that makes this story genuinely strange. Microsoft is making more money than ever. That's why this restructuring keeps accelerating. Azure revenue continues to grow aggressively. Microsoft positioned itself at the center of the AI boom through its OpenAI partnership. Wall Street rewards cloud growth and AI expansion far more than operating system craftsmanship. From an investor's perspective, the strategy looks genius. From a product perspective, it creates a serious risk. Because Windows still powers a massive portion of the modern world. Hospitals rely on it, banks rely on it, airports rely on it, governments rely on it. Millions of businesses rely on ancient Windows-based systems that cannot easily migrate anywhere else. This is not some side product Microsoft can casually treat like an experiment. And yet, more and more users feel like they're participating in one. That tension explains why so many longtime Microsoft observers believe Bill Gates is deeply uncomfortable with the direction of modern Windows. Now, to be clear, Gates hasn't publicly declared war on Microsoft leadership. There's no dramatic press conference, no public feud, but multiple former Microsoft veterans and analysts have repeatedly described a growing divide between the old Microsoft culture and the current strategy-first mentality dominating the company today. The Microsoft Gates built obsessed over software quality and platform trust because Windows was the business. The modern Microsoft increasingly treats Windows as a delivery mechanism for services, subscriptions, AI tools, and ecosystem retention. That is a massive philosophical shift, and honestly, you can feel it every time you use the operating system. Here's the part nobody talks about. Modern Windows sometimes feels less designed for users and more designed for Microsoft's metrics. Why is Edge pushed so aggressively? Why are Microsoft accounts becoming increasingly mandatory? Why do telemetry settings keep expanding? Why are AI integrations appearing before basic bugs get fixed? Because the operating system is no longer the destination. It's the gateway. That's the real transformation happening here. And internally, many employees reportedly understood this years before consumers did. Former Microsoft workers have described increasing pressure around AI timelines, cloud alignment, engagement metrics, and ecosystem integration goals. Teams connected directly to revenue growth gained influence. Traditional Windows development lost status inside the company hierarchy. Again, none of this means Microsoft is collapsing. Quite the opposite. That's what makes the story so unsettling. Microsoft is thriving financially, while simultaneously drifting away from the product philosophy that built user trust in the first place. And users are noticing. Consumer confidence in Windows updates has deteriorated badly over the past decade. Many IT administrators deliberately delay updates because unexpected issues have become too common. Gaming communities monitor patches nervously after repeated performance problems tied to updates and drivers. That level of distrust would have been unimaginable during the Windows XP era. But trust erodes slowly. Then, suddenly. Now Microsoft faces another problem that didn't exist 10 years ago. Users finally have alternatives. Apple Silicon transformed MacBooks into legitimate performance machines with incredible battery life. Linux gaming has improved dramatically thanks to Valve and Proton compatibility layers. Browser-based workflows reduce dependence on operating systems altogether. Windows is still dominant, but it no longer feels untouchable. And Microsoft knows it. That's partly why the company is racing so aggressively toward AI integration and subscription ecosystems. Microsoft wants users connected to services that survive regardless of what operating system people eventually choose. Office 365, OneDrive, Teams, Copilot, Azure Connected Infrastructure. That's the future Microsoft is betting on, not emotional loyalty to Windows itself. And if you think employees inside the company don't feel the consequences of that shift, think again. Imagine spending 15 years building operating system infrastructure only to watch internal prestige migrate almost entirely toward AI products and cloud services. Imagine seeing resources redirected while legacy teams shrink around you. That's the environment many longtime Microsoft employees reportedly experienced during recent restructuring waves. Some adapted, others left voluntarily. Thousands were simply cut. And every time another experienced engineer disappears, Microsoft loses another piece of the institutional continuity that once kept Windows dependable despite its complexity. Because make no mistake, Windows is one of the most complicated software ecosystems ever built. Billions of hardware combinations, decades of backward compatibility, enterprise infrastructure spanning entire governments and corporations. You cannot maintain something that massive indefinitely while reducing experienced personnel and accelerating feature deployment at the same time without trade-offs emerging somewhere. Which brings us to the real threat. Not that Windows disappears, but that Windows slowly becomes worse in ways users can't immediately articulate. A little more bloated every year. A little more cloud-dependent. A little more intrusive. A little less stable. A little less personal. Until eventually people stop trusting it the way they once did. And for Microsoft, that may become a serious long-term problem, because trust was always Windows' true advantage. Not aesthetics, not innovation, compatibility and trust. Businesses trusted Windows to run critical operations. Gamers trusted it to support hardware ecosystems. Developers trusted it to remain stable enough for massive software deployments. If that trust weakens consistently, Microsoft's dominance becomes more vulnerable than many people realize. So, what should users actually do right now? First, stop treating Windows updates like automatic improvements. Wait before installing major updates. Watch community feedback from developers, gamers, and IT professionals before committing to critical systems. Second, build serious backup habits immediately. Local backups matter. Cloud backups matter. Redundancy matters. Modern operating systems are becoming increasingly complex and interconnected. Third, reduce unnecessary dependence on one ecosystem wherever possible. Cross-platform tools give you flexibility if Windows changes in ways you dislike later. Fourth, learn your privacy settings. Every major Windows release introduces new layers of telemetry, AI integration, or account connectivity. Most users never review them carefully. And finally, stay informed about the direction Microsoft is moving instead of assuming Windows will always operate the way it used to. Because the biggest mistake users can make right now is believing this is temporary. It isn't. This is a structural transformation inside one of the most important tech companies in human history. The old Microsoft built Windows as the center of its empire. The new Microsoft builds around AI, cloud infrastructure, and recurring ecosystems first. Windows still matters enormously, but it no longer sits at the top of the hierarchy. And once you understand that, suddenly all the strange decisions make sense. The layoffs, the restructuring, the AI obsession, the aggressive service integration. The feeling that Windows increasingly serves Microsoft more than it serves users. Those aren't isolated frustrations anymore. They're symptoms of a company redefining its identity in real time. And maybe that's why this story hit such a nerve for longtime tech users. Because people aren't just watching a corporate restructuring, they're watching the quiet end of the Windows first era that defined modern computing for decades. The company that once revolved around making the best operating system possible is now chasing something bigger, faster, and vastly more profitable. And whether that future becomes brilliant or disastrous may depend on one very uncomfortable question. Can Microsoft keep the world dependent on Windows after it stops treating Windows like its most important product? If you found the story valuable, share your thoughts below.